Good evening. My name is John Fisher, and I'm a broadcaster on a busman's holiday. And my story is about Canadian radio. And radio in Canada is a unique service of publicly owned and private radio, bringing the nation everything from boogie-woogies to symphonies, from Shakespeare to corn, and from soap operas to headlines. Canadian radio is a national service. Canadian radio serves the nation by reflecting the life and struggles of each part to all other parts. From all the thousands of Canadians crowded into their cities across the nation, to the men and women who farm 1,000 miles of prairie, from one extreme to the other, as a builder of national unity, Canadian radio can't be equaled. For radio in Canada combines the community services of the privately owned stations with the national services of the publicly owned Canadian Broadcasting Corporation into a system of radio coverage that reaches into every corner of the country, no matter how remote. When Canada pioneered by giving financial aid to a radio engineer named Mart Kenney, she helped usher in a new age in world communications. No man then dared to dream that Mart Kenney's simple spark transmitter that could send a message across the Atlantic would almost too swiftly give way to the giant networks of modern times. But in Canada, radio did grow too fast. At first, commercial broadcasting stations mushroomed across the country, but only in the big cities and towns close to the border. Their services didn't reach the isolated people, and that's when radio became the problem child of the Canadian people. That's why a publicly owned network exists today, because Canadians believed that radio should be something more than just another profitable business.
CBR, Vancouver.
CBK, Watrous, Saskatchewan.
CBW, Winnipeg.
CBA, Maritimes.
This is the National News Bulletin, a summary of the day's news. 5 people...
Canadians hear it every day on more than 3 million radios, piped to them through 15,000 miles of telephone and telegraph wires, and through 13 CBC and 100 private stations that together make up the national networks. The Trans-Canada with a maximum outlet of 62 stations. The Dominion network made up of 37 stations. And for French-speaking Canadians, the French network with a maximum of 13 stations. On special occasions, all 3 are combined to form the national network. But it's exactly because radio in Canada reaches so many that another problem comes up. What does the listener want? For the answer, radio reads its fan mail and makes its listener surveys because radio has learned to trust the judgment of the listener. And in Canada, the listener gets what he asks for. Nationwide surveys have given the serious programs a solid place on Canadian airwaves. Broadcast from the pulpit. From the radio forums that bring before the mic people of every profession and opinion. Listened to by people who believe the best citizen is the well-informed citizen. People who believe that radio is one of the best ways of informing the public, of getting all sides of a question heard, of understanding what makes the nation run. And the radio forum in Canada is unusual because it reports back to the nation. This farmer's ideas will be heard by thousands. They'll form the basis of discussions that may take place all across Canada in community halls and living rooms. And when each forum reports, a week or so later, something very close to the sum total of their opinions about that farmer's ideas will be heard on a national radio hookup. And on the serious side, too, are the school broadcasts, programs that bring alive the geography and history of a nation, that dramatize the workings of the world.
Of Western Canada,
traveling by automobile to a meeting with an old Assiniboine Indian named Rain Cloud, who's to be their guide for the day. Their friend's been telling them how Rain Cloud's ancestors used to hunt the buffalo on the Great Plains, and the children are eager to meet the old Indian.
There's a variety of programs in French and English. Programs like Radio Collège that take school into your living room and entertain while they teach. The CBC Wednesday night programs do just that and more by showing how much farther radio can go as a cultural medium. Then there are the not-so-serious programs that put Canada coast to coast on the networks. Programs like The Boogie of Oscar Peterson. Or chamber music. The Trio Lyrique. The music of a favorite dance band. Miles away, the Islanders.
Got my dancing boots on, got my Sunday best, going to the barn dance tonight.
A group in old Quebec. A great symphony orchestra. Radio drama.
Is there something we can do for you, madam?
Yes, young man, there is.
For 50 years, we have been giving maritime satisfaction on prairie canals. Remember our motto, by and large, you go by barge.
Don't be so enthusiastically commercial, young man.
Oh, but madam.
Miss, if you don't mind. I am an elderly maiden in reduced circumstances.
Oh, come.
I am a retired Canadian school teacher.
Oh, dear.
Ah, et dans sa transport mental, il a tué sans le voir l'excellent vieux Polonius.
Geste atroce. Et c'est nous qui l'auraient tué tout aussi bien en cette place. Sa liberté reste un danger constant, une menace pour vous, pour nous, pour tous.
Il parle de ta enfant dans la paroisse, il parle de toi et tout.
De quoi ça qu'ils ont à dire?
Il peut entendre que tu fais bien trop de zèle pour le gouvernement. T'avais pas besoin de rapporter ta dor puis de caribou.
Ça dit ça. Ici.
Bon. Encore ici.
Variety with Bert Pearl.
So let's, madam, will you please put away that knitting? You're going to have to applaud, you know. Now let's all relax. Everybody, shall we? Nobody be nervous. About 10 seconds stand by now. All set?
With the happy gang, keep Happy starts their day with a bang.
Or Canadian folk music on the Prairie Schooner. And every day, by exchange, by relay, or transcription,
take you now to New York City for an exchange program from Carnegie Hall.
And from overseas may come a favorite personality, like Charles Trenet.
Philosophe, écoutez, cette phrase est pour vous. Le bonheur est un astre volage qui s'enfuit à l'appel de bien des rendez-vous. Il s'efface, il se meurt devant nous. Quand on croit qu'il est loin, il est là tout près de nous. Il voyage, il voyage, il voyage. Puis il part, il revient, il s'en va n'importe où. Cherchez-le, il est un peu partout. Le soleil, rendez-vous avec la lune, mais la lune n'est pas là et le soleil attend. Ici-bas, souvent chacun pour sa chacune, chacun doit en faire autant. La lune est là, 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 mais le soleil ne la voit pas. Faut la trouver, faut la nuit, mais le soleil ne le sait pas, est toujours lui. Le soleil, rendez-vous avec la lune, mais la lune n'est pas là et le soleil attend.
But there's more to radio in Canada than you can hear. It's a big industry now that gives jobs and opportunities to thousands of Canadians. And it has a big story about people. People like the CBC executives who form the program policies for the nation. People like the writers and directors and office workers in cities all across the Dominion. Like the engineers at their lonely post, the announcers in their soundproof studio, the piano tuners and the scrub women, the young operators at their consoles,
Paul, I wish you wouldn't have got that.
the producers and their actors in rehearsal, the musicians, composers, orchestrators, arrangers, and copyists working over their scores. The newsmen who run a world-scale news-gathering machine, who pick and choose and edit and compress the headlines for today's news bulletins. The men who run the transcription turntables, busy with recordings for programs like Capitol Report.
Never been to a French museum, and never read a French book, and hadn't even been to Notre Dame or Napoleon's tomb. All the same, he said, I know...
The engineers and draftsmen who do the technical planning. And here we can only scratch the surface by telling about how these men planned the networks that cover so effectively 5 of the world's 12 time zones and reach 96 out of every 100 Canadians, wherever they may be. How they pioneered in the use of low-powered repeater stations to operate automatically and carry network broadcasts into remote regions in Canada. Or how they've helped prepare Canadian radio for frequency modulation that gives the listener better reception of a greater tone range. And there's the story of how they're meeting the problems Canada poses for television broadcasting, mainly the problem of distance. Here, plans are going forward from drafting tables to labs like these for an original system of television, using Canadian talent and experience to be more than just a pipeline for programs produced outside the country. It was these CBC engineers who designed and built on reclaimed marshland near Sackville, New Brunswick, the web of aerial wires that beams the voice of Canada loud and clear to nearly every country in the world in 10 languages. The success of Sackville is measured by the distance its unique antenna system can squirt the signals in 6 directions to cover every important land area on the globe. But success can be measured in more ways than one. In educational help to the broken countries of Europe, in building around the world a more accurate knowledge of Canada as a neighbor and world trader. The value of these international shortwave broadcasts is tremendous.
Ici, la Voix du Canada, le service international de Radio-Canada.
Hallo Norge, dette Canada.
Canada, volá Československo.
Il Canada parla l'Italia. Hallo deutsche Hörer, hier spricht Kanada.
Canada roept Nederland.
Canada anropar Sverige.
This is Canada, the international service of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
From the manager of the small community station to the policy makers of the CBC, the men who run this unique radio system are Canadians, concerned with the future of Canadian radio. They've seen how radio has linked together the far spaces of the country. They want radio to take an even more important part. They want to undertake even greater responsibilities to their listeners and to the country's rising group of writers and entertainers. And they want to tell Canada's story even more vividly and completely to the world. They look for the true tones of Canadian life. And that's the story of Canadian radio. John Fisher speaking. Good night.